Okay, we're going to start chapter 1 in the summer because I don't want to waste time with it during the school year. This is an introductory chapter, and it's going to highlight some very basic things about biology that you need to understand before we can move on to other chapters. Evolution, it's the process where an organism changes over time. Usually the driving factor with the changing over time is the environment. Something has happened in the environment that makes that organism have to change to survive. So if we look here at this mouse, he lives in some sort of white sandy beach area with these light colored brown foliage, I suppose, if you will. So notice his fur, it matches, so he's camouflaged. Conversely, if we look at this mouse, we see he's got this brown fur that is almost identical to the natural foliage that's on the ground. These are ways that these mice have evolved, changed over time. They would have come from a common ancestor, but because they are in different areas, this has driven them to look different so they can survive. If I were to take this mouse and put it in the other mouse's habitat, he wouldn't survive as well. He would stick out like a sore thumb. Biology is a scientific study of life, and it measures tangible things, things that we can touch, that we can physically observe, that we can take measurements of. It's not going to be anything supernatural, like is there a ghost living in my upstairs? That would be considered almost a pseudoscience, okay? So biologists are going to look at things like, how does a single cell develop into an organism? We do have some themes that are going to appear throughout the entire year. So let's talk about those themes. The first one, new properties emerge at successive levels of biological organization. So the way I want you to approach this is, I want you to think about a pyramid. And I want you to take that pyramid and I want you to turn it upside down. So the widest part is at the top, the most specific, the smallest part is at the bottom. Okay, like an upside down triangle. Our broadest level is number 1, the biosphere. Okay, it's going to be the all-encompassing. Obviously our biosphere is going to be planet Earth. If we find life somewhere else, like Mars, okay, then our top layer is going to be something different than the biosphere. We have to take that into account. But remember, in biology we're looking at living things. So let's go through this level of hierarchy. Number 1, the biosphere. We just talked about that. That's planet Earth. Number 2, ecosystems. These will be things like the tundra, the rainforest, the desert, something that has a similar climate. It talks about all the biotic and abiotic factors living there. So again, we look at the weather, we look at the climate, we look at the vegetation, we look at the type of animals that live there as a whole. The third is the community, and keep in mind we're starting at the very top of our pyramid and we're working our way down to the very bottom. A community looks at everything that's living in that particular area. So it could be the trees, the bacteria, the deer, the grasses that you see down here at the bottom, all of the insects, everything that's alive that's in that area is part of that community. A population, on the other hand, looks at only one type of species living in a given area. So these might be, I'm going to say oak trees. I don't know. I can't tell from looking at the picture. But all of these oak trees that live in that area make up a population. Organisms, in this case, we're looking at one specific living entity. One living tree in this case. One deer. That would be the organism. And an organism is made up of organs and organ systems. In the case of a tree, one of their organs and organ systems are leaves. Leaves are an organ. They capture sunlight. The organ systems that run through this particular organ are xylem and phloem. For those of you who have taken Zoobot, that's not a new term to you. Then the leaves of that tree are made up of tissues. Okay, and 2 different types for 2 different functions. We won't get into that. But these tissues all are made of the same type of cell that has the same function. So we're going to go a level down. And we're going to go to cells. Tiny individual cell, it's made up of organelles. All of these organelles work together to make that cell living. Here's one specific organelle, the chloroplast. We have other things like the mitochondria, the Golgi body, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, ribosomes, the nucleus. These would all fit here under organelles. And they're very, very, very tiny, 1 micrometer. This is this is just this little span right here. This is a chloroplast, only found in plants. You don't have chloroplast. If you did, you would be green. Then finally, the last level, and we can go even more down than this, but we're going to stop at molecules. This is a chlorophyll molecule. This is the molecule that is actually responsible for capturing sunlight. Emergent properties are properties that appear as we go up the pyramid. Okay, for instance, let's think about a disassembled bicycle. Okay, if I handed you a box with all these parts, yes, individually they would do their own thing, like a bicycle tire is made to roll, but it can't do it without being attached to some other part. So as we start to put the bicycle together, we can see new things appear that hadn't appeared before. These are emergent properties. They do characterize, that's what I was just talking about, the non-biological entities as well. Systems biology, that just means that we have to narrow something down that we're studying. Okay, if we're looking at all of the Asian carp within the Illinois River, Asian carp that live there would be our system. However, if we wanted to look at the Asian carp within a span of Grafton to Campbell, that would be a different system, would be a smaller system. So it is changeable depending on what we want to study. At each level of biological hierarchy, we find a correlation between structure and function. This is incredibly important. Everything has a function, okay? A hammer, for instance, is good for driving nails. You wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a bolt. There is a different tool for that, okay? It's the same thing with biology. If you want to fly, you're going to need wings, okay? If you want to run, you're going to need legs, okay? If you have a fin, you can't run. You can swim really fast, but there is structure and function. So analyzing a biological structure can give clues about what it does and how it works. Think of Occam's razor here. The simplest solution is usually the correct one. Cell is the smallest unit of life. They all share certain characteristics, such as enclosed by a membrane. Two main ones are prokaryotes and eukaryotes. You're a eukaryote. Bacteria and archaea are the only living prokaryotes. Eukaryotes have a DNA containing nucleus. They have membrane-enclosed organelles, like the chloroplast, the mitochondria, the endoplasmic reticulum. Prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus or other membrane-bound organelles. They do have ribosomes, but they don't have anything else, and they are much smaller. So here is a general image of our eukaryotic cells, much larger. We have a membrane surrounding it. We have all these organelles on the inside. We have our nucleus right here in the center, enclosed by a membrane. And if we compare our size to a prokaryotic cell, we see it's much simpler. There's a nucleus in the inside, but that's it, really. Another theme, life's processes involve the expression and transmission of genetic information. Chromosomes contain most of a cell's genetic material in the form of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. This is the genetic information of life. Okay, every living thing has DNA. Here we can see it as these blue fingers that are splitting during mitosis. Genes are the units of inheritance that are passed from parent to offspring. As cells grow and divide, the genetic information is what's responsible for telling each part of the cell to do what. So here we can see the fusion of two genetic codes through fertilization. This will direct the mitosis, if you will, to form an embryo, and eventually you have a baby. DNA is made up of two long chains, known as a double helix, and the rungs of the ladder, you've always heard, probably since you were freshmen, that DNA looks like a ladder. And those rungs, those are made up of adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, abbreviated A, T, C, and G. Here's what it looks like. So this is the sides of the ladder. It's that sugar phosphate backbone. Off of each sugar we have adenine, cytosine, thymine, or guanine, and they alternate. Remember, DNA is double-stranded, and it twists, and that's how it gets the name double helix. Gene expression is the process of converting information from gene to cellular product. So if your DNA codes that you have blue eyes, gene expression, you'll see blue eyes. RNA is what carries out the function of the DNA. It's what leaves the nucleus and actually directs protein synthesis in your ribosomes, and we'll see that later on. Let's see, genomics is the study of a set of genes within and between species. This is how you can tell how closely related two organisms are. The more they have in common with their DNA, the more common their ancestor must have been. You are more closely related to a fungus than you are to a plant. So you're going to have more in common of your DNA with a fungus than you do with a plant. Another theme, life requires energy and the transfer of energy and matter. Remember, the law of conservation of energy and the law of conservation of matter says that it is neither created nor destroyed, it just changes form. The ultimate source of energy is the sun. Plants capture it, plants and algae if you will. Then you have your consumers that come along and eat it, and this energy is transferred through the food chains. Some of it is ultimately lost as heat, and heat is not a usable form of energy. It cannot be harnessed to do any other type of work, so it's considered wasted energy. Chemical elements, however, are recycled within an ecosystem. You hit a deer with your car, it's laying alongside the road, the bacteria feed on it, and then they will recycle nutrients back into the soil. Some plant will absorb those nutrients, they grow. Here comes a cow, they eat the tree, they take those those nutrients from the tree. The cow dies, gets fed on by decomposers. Decomposers release those nutrients back to the soil, and the cycle continues. So we can see it here. Light comes in, it's a one-way path, it's ultimately released as heat. Chemical energy, however, is continually recycled. Comes up here in a plant, gets fed on by a bug. This organic material is broken down by decomposers, and those elements are returned to the soil, absorbed by another plant, so forth and so on. Organisms interact with other organisms and the physical environment. You have to do this in order to survive. I like this example. A tree takes up water and minerals from the soil and carbon dioxide from the air. The tree releases oxygen to the air, and roots help form soil. And sometimes organisms form a relationship with other type of species. In this case, he has some sort of bacteria, some sort of bug living on his skin, and these fish are feeding off of it. So they're actually benefiting from each other. Turtle here is getting a nice cleaning. The fish are getting dinner. Evolution is our core theme of biology. It makes sense of everything we know. It explains patterns of unity and diversity. Similar traits among organisms are explained by descent from common ancestors, and differences among organisms are explained by the accumulation of heritable traits. This PowerPoint will be posted on Edmodo, so you can come back and look at this a little bit slower if you'd like. I'm going to pause at this point, and we will cover sections 2 and 3 in another podcast. Thank you.